응? Apa nih? ठीक है, था। Uh, Hi everyone, welcome to Greenomix World Studio. Today we are going to discuss about bioenergy in Ukraine and current investments and what are the opportunities in coming days. And today we are very fortunate to have Georgi Guletukha with us. He is the head of Bioenergy Association of Ukraine, currently based out of in Ukraine. So he will today we'll have a complete discussion on the biomass energy market in Ukraine. What are the production targets in terms of renewable energy and how biomass can be really beneficial, and what are the government plans and targets set for the next 5 to 10 years timeline, like then what are the challenges and what are the current market potential in Ukraine, and what are the investors should look for in terms of technology, in terms of adaptation of new technology, and what are the barriers they need to know. So today Georgie will help us putting some information on, and details about the Ukrainian market, and what we will be discussing. And after that presentation from the Georgie, we will have a complete question and answer session. So welcome everyone to the Genomics World webinar. And So we have approximately 57 participants who are now currently viewing this Genomics World webinar across the world, but more specifically from Ukraine. This time being, this is a bioenergy discussion forum for the Ukrainian market. So welcome everyone, and welcome Georgie to the Genomics World webinar. Georgie, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so that's nice. So today we have our guest speaker from Bioenergy Association of Ukraine. He is going to give a complete details of the bioenergy industry in Ukraine, and what are the current updates, and what are the investment opportunities for the market. So just before we start, we'll just ask Georgie to share his presentation here now, and I'll ask him to continue from here about the presentation he's having. Georgie, over to you.
Okay. And can I use my presentation which I sent
Yes,
you?
Georgie, you just have to go, and in that you can go. There is a new share. You can upload your presentation there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see?
I see only your slide and not my presentation.
You have your presentation with you, right, Georgie?
Yes.
And you can share that. You can share your screen so that that presentation will come up.
I don't understand where is my presentation. Okay.
Got it?
Okay, I found my presentation. Do you see it?
No, you have to just share. Can you just move your mouse? You will find there is a new share option.
Okay.
And you have to Can you see like this screen? And you have to choose your presentation and select and share your screen.
I see you. I see you and me, but my presentation from my computer, but not in your system.
Yeah, so what
I
you
don't.
have to do, just move your mouse to the top of the screen. There will be a drop down menu. You will find
Mouse to what? To
to
which
top
screen?
to on the top of the slide. Can you see? There is a new share option. You got it?
No.
So should I share your presentation and move the slides for you?
I see only you and me. I don't see my presentation. And I don't understand what I need to do.
You just have to. One second. This is your presentation, right?
I don't see presentation.
Can
I
you see
see
now?
you. No.
So there is a share screen option below. Can you see? Share screen option. Can you see? There is a share screen option for you in the Zoom meeting window. You getting?
Now I see my presentation, but I don't know if you see it.
No, you have to share it, Georgie. You have to share it. Can you share that screen?
I don't know.
Georgie, what I am doing?
Okay. I see something. Okay, I see my presentation.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I shared it, Georgie. This is the presentation. What I'll do, I will be moving the slides. Whenever you say next, I will be moving the slides
Okay.
for you, right?
Okay. Let's do this. Okay, I can start, yeah?
Yes, okay.
Hello, everybody. My name is Georgi Gelitucha. I'm head of the board of Bioenergy Association of Ukraine. It's my pleasure to present you last events in bioenergy sector in Ukraine, and thank you for opportunity to speak on this webinar. Next slide, please. We are Profile Association, established about 5 years ago, especially to lobby bioenergy development in Ukraine. At the moment, we have 20 plus companies in the association, and additionally 10 plus experts joining our association. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, and this is a general picture of renewable energy sector development in Ukraine. And you see last figure of our statistics correspond to 2016. And Ukraine has only 5.8% of renewable in total final energy consumption of Ukraine. And you see dynamic is improved last 2 years. Then between 2016, 15, 16, approximately 1% per year we add in renewables. And this upper picture is a division in which subsectors we use renewables. Upper line is power generation from renewables. You see its figure is almost 8%, but dynamic is not so high that you see more or less the same figure last 3 years. This red line is a heat production from Ukraine, from renewables. And you see the biggest progress in this heat production area. And green line is a transport. Transport is also near stagnation and no visible growth. Then we can conclude that practically all growth of renewable energy in Ukraine corresponds to growth of heat from renewables production. That our mostly developing sector is a heat production from renewables. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. This is also statistics. Okay, this one. This is also statistics from our energy balances, and starting from 2010 and last energy balance published for 2016. And this blue line is dots from this energy balance, which is indicating total supply of primary energy from biofuel and waste. And you can see these dots in million ton of oil equivalent, and you can see that during these 6 last years, these dots grow from about 1 million ton of oil equivalent till 2.8 million ton of oil equivalent. And average growth is 35% per year. And we expect similar trend for nearest future. Then we can conclude from this slide that bioenergy is in principle in good dynamic in Ukraine, plus 35% each year. It's in comparison with other sectors of our economy is one of the faster growing sector. Maybe only agriculture is more or less competitors and with a similar rate of increase. Next slide. Yeah. This is a slide from our new energy strategy, which is approved by government at the end of 2017. And you see the main balances of energy for now and for future, in particular for 2035. And you see red color marked biomass, biofuels, and waste. And at the moment, or in 2015, input of biomass and biofuels was 2.1 million ton of oil equivalent. And for 2035, prognosis is 11 million ton of oil equivalent. Growth more than 5 times. for nearest 20 years. Then you can see also coal sector, for example. At the moment is 27 million ton of oil equivalent, but for future it's 12. Then we see two processes in Ukraine. Decreasing of coal consumption and in parallel more or less the same increase of biomass for energy consumption. And you see in 2035 share of coal and biomass will be more or less equal. And the second conclusion from this slide, that biomass in 2035 at the moment is about 80% of all renewables in Ukraine. You see figure for solar and hydro, and they are much lower than for biomass and biofuels. Situation will be more or less synchronized in 2035, but biomass input will be equal to other renewables input in Ukraine. Solar, wind, and hydro together will be equal to biomass and biofuels input. Then biomass is very important sector for Ukraine at the moment already, and it will be even much more important in the future. It will be like our current coal sector. Biomass will play more or less the same role in the future. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. This is calculation. What kind of biomass and biofuels we will use? If you see at the current situation, it's about 90% of woody biomass. This is wood logs, wood chips, wood pellets, different kind of wood. And about 10%, this is specific Ukrainian agricultural residues, sunflower husk. Ukraine is quite leading country in the world in the harvesting of sunflower. We are number one in the world producer of sunflower oil, and this sunflower husk is a byproduct of this industry, and we use it quite actively already. And the level of utilization of sunflower husk more or less 90% already. That we already utilize practically all sunflower husk which is generating in Ukraine. But for future, for 2035, picture will be quite different. You see slow growth of woody biomass, that it's like 30% plus from current situation. The reason we are not really woody country, that only 15% territory covered by forest, and this figure is a maximum what we can use woody biomass as a fuel, and practically all other territory used for agriculture. That we are a very agricultural country, and you see this yellow chart is different kind of agricultural residues, like a straw, like corn stems, sunflower husk, sunflower stems, and different kind of agricultural residues. And we also seriously thinking about specially harvested biomass, like energy crops. We started do this already. At the moment, we harvested about 6,000 hectares of energy crops. First of all, willow, poplar, miscanthus, and this kind of energy crops. And we plan to do this much more in the future. In the Ukrainian situation, we have 32 million hectares of agricultural land. And from this 32, we use at the moment 28. That last 20 and more years, we don't use about 4 million hectares of agricultural land. We don't need agricultural product from this land. And it's quite logically if we will use part of this land for energy crops. Then we have this reserve of free agricultural land, which can be used for harvesting of energy crops without competition with food production. Then our estimations, and in 2035, we easily can generate this 10 million ton of oil equivalent from biomass, and this is a distribution of this figure between different kind of biomass. But the conclusion that 2/3 of our biomass in the future will be from agriculture. It will be agricultural residues, or it will be specially harvested energy crops. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is some figures where we are now and where we are going in the future. In 2016, for example, our utilization of biomass equal 2.8 million ton of oil equivalent. In the natural gas consumption, it's equivalent 3.5 billion cubic meters of gas. At the moment, it's about 12% of natural gas consumption in Ukraine. It means that we already replaced 12% of natural gas consumption in Ukraine by biomass. And for example, if we will not use this biomass, we need additionally 3.5 billion cubics of natural gas per year, which is quite a big figure and which is quite costly. And this equipment which we use to produce energy from biomass at the moment cost about 1 billion euro. That we already invested in this sector about 1 billion euro, and this sector generated at the moment about 13,000 new jobs. And the similar figure is presented for future, and especially, this figure corresponds to governmental document. For example, for 2020, this figure corresponds to National Renewable Energy Action Plan, which is approved by government, and the target of this plan to reach 12% of renewables in 2020, and it will correspond to 3.6 million ton of oil equivalent. Yeah. And it will double practically new jobs. And at the moment, we have good chances to reach target of this renewable energy action plan in the heat sector. We are a little bit postponed in the electricity. We are quite far from target in the transport, but we are more or less in the line of this action plan in the heat sector. That I am optimistic that 12% of renewable in the heat sector we will reach in 2020. And then we have figures from our energy strategy till 2035. The main target to reach 30% of renewable heat in 2030 and 40% of renewable heat in 2035. Then it's quite ambition targets. To reach this 40% of renewable heat for Ukrainian conditions, in energy, it's practically 10 million ton of oil equivalent we should use. It will generate practically 100,000 new jobs. And total investment will be about 8 billion euro to reach this target. Then you see that figure is quite ambitious. And what is important that these figures is approved by government, and we are moving in this direction at the moment. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is about distribution, where we use this heat which we are speaking. At the moment, about half of this renewable heat is in the private houses, where population using biomass, mostly biomass, in private individual boilers. And about half is in the industry, where industry actively use their biomass residues. First of all, it's forestry treatment enterprises, it's wood processing enterprises, sunflower oil producers. They actively use byproduct of biomass for energy. And for future, you see one more sector we expect that will input a lot. This is a district heating system. Green one on this table. Then we have quite developed district heating systems in Ukraine. At the moment, it's about 50 with something percent our district heating systems from total heat systems in Ukraine. And district heating used biomass at the moment, very limited figure, but in the future it will be one of the main consumer. That together these sectors, private population, industry plus district heating system, will consume this about 10 million ton of oil equivalent biofuels, and will generate about 40% renewable heat in Ukraine in 2035. Next slide, please. Okay, this is potential of biomass available for energy in Ukraine. You see different kind of biomass which is available in Ukraine. The biggest share is different kind of agricultural residues like straw, stems, sunflower husk, what I mentioned before. This is a physical tone of these residues. And the second column, which share we plan to use for energy. For example, for straw, we plan to use only 30% of straw for energy and 70% for agricultural purposes like digging in the soil for fertilization. And for other agricultural residues, this figure is 40%. Then even with this 30 and 40%, you see share of agricultural residues in million ton of oil equivalent. It's quite high and corresponds about 42% of total biomass in Ukraine. And the second big share is energy crops, which we can harvest in our free agricultural land. In these slides, scenarios where we use 1 million hectare of free agricultural land for willow poplar miscanthus harvesting, which will be used as a fuel in the boilers. and 1 million hectare for corn for production of silage for biogas. And with this 1 plus 1 million hectares, we have additionally this 28% of our resources of biofuel. And altogether, we consider our resources is 21 million oil equivalent, and Ukraine consume about 90 million ton of oil equivalent. That it's about 25% of total need of Ukraine is available as a biomass resources. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, this is some feasibility parameters. Then if we install 10 megawatt boiler using wood chips or baled maize stalks in district heating, it is indicated typical fuel cost, typical investment, and typical internal rate of return and payback period. You see, project is quite profitable in current Ukrainian conditions with IRR 28%, which is quite interesting to investors. Similar figure is for CHP. If you construct a combined heat and power plant producing electricity plus heat from the same fuel, 6 megawatt electrical plus 18 megawatt thermal. Figures is on the slide, and the IRR is 23%, which is also interesting, and payback a little bit more than 4 years, which is interesting for investors. And only power station, 6 megawatt electrical, is worse in these economical indicators with IRR 13%. Then we are recommending, if you invest in biomass projects in Ukraine, we recommend as a priority is a CHP option and only heat option. That only electricity option is not the best from economical point of view. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a little bit about main drivers and barriers for bioenergy production in Ukraine. The main drivers is some drivers. The first is market prices for natural gas for industry and public organization. For example, 3-4 years ago, we have quite different gas prices for different consumers. For industry, it was already market prices, but for population, for district heating companies, these prices were 5-6 times cheaper than prices for industry. And of course, it killed interest to replace this gas in the sector of population and district heating because of this low price. From May 2016, it was a high increase of gas prices for population and district heating companies, and now they less than for industry, but only 40% less than prices in industry. And of course, it's absolutely different situation. It's much more much more effective, much more economical to replace this gas by biomass in current conditions. Next, last year, Ukraine changed system of installation of tariffs on the heat energy produced from biomass. At the moment, it's a fixed tariff equal to heat tariff from the gas minus 10%. That it's very simple principle, very simple formula, and each investor know in advance which tariff from the heat he will receive, and this tariff is covering his investments and providing him return on investments on the level which I showed before. And also it's some improvements in other legislation, like first step of monetization of subsidies in Ukraine. In Ukraine, after this high increase of the gas prices, part of population cannot pay these high prices, and government subsidizing this population and paying them subsidies. But before this year, the subsidies was not in the money form. And from January 2018, this subsidy is monetized, and now producer of heat, which is providing to many floor buildings with part of population which is using the subsidies, can receive real money for provided heat. Then this is a good improvement and removing one of the barriers. Unfortunately, we have some barriers yet, which is not removed, like this 40% difference in the prices, and for population and for industry. But at the moment, the Ukraine in the process of negotiations with the International Monetary Fund, Ukraine is interested to receive a new tranche from this IMF organization, and one of the requests to synchronize these prices for population and for industry. And now we are waiting 1st September of this year, and it's likely that from 1st September these gas prices will be more or less equalized, and this barrier will be removed. We see as a barrier a lack of market instrument for biofuel trade. We have more and more boilers, we have more and more CHPs on biomass, and it's sometimes it's difficult to buy biomass due to absence of this market instrument. That we are working now in association on the development of biofuel exchange, the place where main sellers of biomass and main buyers of biomass, biofuels will meet each other and will find needed volume and needed prices of biofuels. At the moment, this draft law is prepared, and we think that this year we will see this law in the parliament, and it will be accepted at least in the first reading, and somewhere in 2019 we have good chances to launch this biofuel exchange in Ukraine, and it will help to all boilers, CHP, power stations to buy needed volume of biofuel. And also we are working on improvement of model for our district heating companies, because at the moment it's more or less monopoly type of companies. In one city, it's one company working, and typically it's a conflict of interest for them to connect independent producer of heat from biomass to the existing heat networks, and to simplify, to provide this transparent and not discriminating rules of connection for these independent producers of heat to existing heat networks. We also need to improve legislation, and we are working on this. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, then my conclusion is quite optimistic. Ukraine is in good movement in the sector of bioenergy. In general, 35% per year increase rate of development of bioenergy, mostly in the heat sector production. And we already invested a billion euro in this equipment, and the niche for investment is up to 8 billion euro to this equipment to reach installed by government targets for 2035. And we have full open and economically feasible projects in the heat production from biomass for private houses, heat production for biomass for public, industrial and commercial consumers, power production from biomass with CHP as a more feasible option. Next slide, please. And here is information about our September conference on biomass for energy, 25-26 September in Kiev. We will discuss all questions concerning bioenergy development in Ukraine. Typically 200 participants participating in this conference with a big share of foreigners with simultaneous translation to English. Welcome to this conference. And I think my last slide is the next. Yeah, thank you for your attention. Welcome to Ukraine and to UABO, which is Ukrainian Bioenergy Association. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you for this great insight on the Ukrainian market today. And Judge, you have a lot of questions for you. There are people from different countries who are interested for the Ukrainian market. They have asked few questions, which I will be putting to you. There is Halim Badri. He's from France, and he's asking how cost effective is biomass energy with compared to solar and other renewables, and what are the latest technologies in biomass energy that Ukraine is offer. There are two questions.
Okay. I think the question about power, about electricity, yeah. Then in Ukraine we have special law on feed-in tariffs or on green tariffs, which is supporting production of electricity from renewables. According current version of this law, we guarantee for solar energy, for big solar, for big capacity of solar, 15 euro cents per kilowatt hour till 2030. And taking into account that cost of solar power is reducing each year, at the moment we have the most favorable conditions in renewable electricity. This is the summer. Because tariff is high, project is quite simple, no need in the fuel, and guaranteed till 2030. And last year we see that 80% of money in power generating sector from renewables were spent to solar. That this is the most growing sector in the power generation. Total capacity of installed solar near 800 megawatt electrical from solar. And in comparison from biomass, it's about 40 on the biomass plus other 40 from the biogas. Then biomass and biogas much less than from solar. And one of the reasons that our feed-in tariff for biomass and biogas at the moment is 12.3 euro cents per kilowatt hour, much lower than for solar. Project is more complicated and we need fuel, and this fuel costs money also. Then, answering your question, winner in this competition between solar and biomass in power generating sector obviously is solar. Situation may be changed in near future because at the moment Ukraine discussing changing of this feed-in tariff system and going to auctions from January 2020. And these auctions will be obligatory for big solar and big wind. For solar, it's more than 5 megawatt electrical. It's obligatory go to the auctions, and only if you win auctions, you will receive tariff, and this tariff will be less than fixed now in the feed-in tariff law. And for wind, it will be 10 megawatt electrical and the same system. Biomass is not obligatory go to the auctions and will continue live in the current system. But the problem that in 1st January 2020, all feed-in tariffs will be reduced 10%, and for biomass and biogas, it's quite critical. That at the moment we don't see big investments in the power from biomass and biogas, and after this 10% reduction, we afraid full stop in the current rules. Then that's why our association started discussion with government. We developed a proposition not to reduce this 10% in 2020. Even increase some feed-in tariff for middle capacity and for small capacity. The 12 is more or less okay for big capacity, but not for middle and small. And we also proposed to postpone this term of guarantee. Now it's 2030, which is quite close, and investors is not safety with this 2030 guarantee. And we are asking the same approach as discussing under auctions, 20-year guaranteed PPA, that if you signed PPA, it will be for 20 years, not till 2030. And now all this under discussion in the parliament, in the government, and idea to finish this discussion somewhere in September, and in September develop one aggregating draft law with all developed propositions. And we hope that at least part of our propositions for biomass and bioenergy will be taken into consideration and will find place in this final text of the law. Then situation may be quite different. And absolutely different situation in the heat sector. In the heat sector, biomass is very successful. What I demonstrated in my presentation, we don't need any subsidies here. We don't need special feed-in tariff for heat or something like this. We work cheaper than the heat from the natural gas, At the moment, this system minus 10% from the tariff from the gas. And even with this minus 10%, we are competitive and interesting for investments.
Yeah, thank you. There's this another question from Amir Mustafa from Morocco. So he's asking why there is a sudden increase in straws and sudden reduction in wood biomass. Is there a plan to increase the agricultural activities in near future in Ukraine?
Okay. Yes, agricultural sector in Ukraine is under very good development. One example, in Soviet time, yeah, it's more than 25 years ago, our best harvest of grain in Ukraine was on the level 20 million ton. Ukraine, it's one of the best for the history of Ukraine as a part of Soviet Union. But last year, for example, our harvest of grain in Ukraine was 64 million ton. It's 3 times more than in Soviet times. And our agricultural expert expecting 100 million